Today, we want to take a closer look at the cross. You see, the cross is the Roman symbol of death. The Roman symbol literally of death. But God transformed the cross from a symbol of death to the Christian to a symbol of life. And we want to address that today in a very, very unique way. When I lived in Florida, we lived in actually Neptune Beach. Our church was in Atlantic Beach, Florida, which is northern Florida up in the Jacksonville area. And when people would come down to visit with us, we would try and show them as much as we could about the area that we lived in, realizing that we were many miles from most of the main tourist attractions down in Orlando and etc. But we would take them and give them a little snapshot of what it was like in our particular area. And that's what Rick and I would like to try and do with you today, is to give you a little snapshot of the cross and what's behind the cross, because it becomes so important that we understand that. So we want us just to include a couple places, and then we're just going to have you just look around with us today.
It's been 25 years, but the sights and the sounds are firmly planted in my mind. Debbie and I were working a week of camp at Rock Lake Christian Assembly, and we played a role-play game called Persecution, Christians versus the Romans. And it was designed to help the campers to understand that every day in life, we face decisions where we can stand up for Jesus or follow the world, where we can give our lives away and support other people, or we can pursue our own selfish gratification. The climax of this game came when we witnessed a crucifixion. And I remember watching as they took Derek, one of the adult faculty, a college student, and they tied his arms up between two poles of the dining hall, outside the dining hall. And they took a towel and they whipped his bare back and his bare legs and left welts on his body. And when that towel slapped against his back, we winced in pain ourselves. The game was no longer a role play. It had become real, the feelings and the sights. We watched as they took Derek over and they placed him on a cross to crucify him. And we watched as his arms were stretched out, and we watched his chest rise and fall with each breath. But that breathing became more shallow and fainter till finally his chest stopped moving and his head dropped. One of the Roman guards came over and checked his pulse and announced, "He's dead." And we watched as they took his lifeless body from that cross and they carried him away. And I remember standing about 120 junior hires and adults looking around at the response. And there were a few who were upset that their recreation had been interrupted and they went back to playing basketball. But for the most part, I've been to many funerals, sad funerals, unexpected funerals, where there is sobbing, but none of them compared to what I witnessed and experienced that day. And yet, as horrendous as it was, they actually thought we had killed Derek. As bad as that was, it pales in comparison to what Jesus went through, because when they whipped Jesus back, it wasn't with a towel. But the whip had metal and it had glass, and it was designed to tear open the flesh with each crack of that whip. And when they were done whipping him, they had beat him, they pummeled his face, they placed a crown of thorns on his head, and by this point he was barely alive. And they took a heavy wooden cross and they placed it on his back, and they said, "Carry it through the streets up to the hill." The streets of that angry mob. They was screaming and mocking. And that street was known as the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering. Have you ever used the word excruciating? I'm in excruciating pain. I doubt it. Take it out of your vocabulary, because the word excruciating means out of the cross. And I don't think any of us ever have or ever will experience pain like that. Yet through all the pain that Jesus went through the blood that was lost, That's not what killed him. What killed the victims of the crucifixion was suffocation, as they hung on the cross and they had to push up with their bodies to allow the air to fill their lungs. But as they grew weak, they no longer had the energy and they suffocated. That is the scene that the bystanders would have witnessed that day. And as Roger said, I want to give you in the next 10 minutes 5 quick snapshots of people who were in the crowd that day. And let's see how they responded, what maybe they were thinking, and how it relates to us as well.